Hey everyone, welcome back to the Above Board podcast. And today, just a few weeks ago, you've got me, the John K, with the Rich B. What's up, dude?
How are you, the John K?
Well, I'm good. You know what I love about our conversation topic today is, I don't know if we should tell the audience this, but it's not exactly pre-planned. We kind of said, here's a topic and let's run with it. Turns out that was one of my favorite podcast conversations we had a few weeks ago when we did risk, regret, and resilience. That was your idea, and we just ran with it.
You know, I sometimes I have really good ideas. Just nobody cares. No, just you care. You care about my good ideas. You have good
Everyone
ideas
cares.
too.
The listeners care.
You think? I think we have great listeners. By the way, we have.
You have 1 million followers on social media that suggest otherwise. That suggest that they do in fact care.
They do in fact care. I have the people that follow me. I have on TikTok and IG, which is some overlap. But now I'm starting to grow a little bit on YouTube, and I got to tell you something. There's some, everybody talks about social media, but I got to tell you, I get really cool people, like people that I really really love. There's some really good people out there. So hi to all of you guys, and we're glad you're staying here. Wait, speaking of staying, this is what we want to talk about today. So John, when somebody leaves a company or leaves an organization, usually, let's say if they're big enough that they have an HR department, sometimes even if they don't have an HR department, smart companies will do what's called an exit interview, right? So you're leaving company A to go to company B. And by the way, do you know the Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from company B? Have you ever heard that song?
What did you just say? That was like a
The
different language.
Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from company B. It's like a really old song from I want to say it was World War II. Hold on. Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from company B. I just said company B. Here, no, this is really cool. This is the original. Here, I'm going to play it. Hold on. Give me 1 second. Can you hear it?
No, you have too professional of a podcast mic for this to come through.
Oh, it doesn't come through?
Nope.
Really?
Maybe we'll try to dub it in post production.
I could hear it. Anyway, sorry, that was a waste. I'm very disappointed because it's a really cool song. Anyway, I said company B. So those of you who've never heard of the song right now, wait, want me to mess with people? Ready? Alexa, play Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from company B.
You've just all of our listeners have just turned this podcast off 3 minutes in. They're like, you know what? I'm done with these guys. The level of ADHD, the ADHD that we exhibit in the first 5 minutes of our podcast when it's just you and me. That's why we need Matt with the three of us, because I feel like he brings us back. He brings us on task.
But it's
all right,
funny.
You were segueing into exit interviews.
I'm still there though. But here's the crazy thing. I know exactly how to get back. But whenever I used to do TikTok lives, I used to just randomly do that. And people would I'd have 300 people in a live. And everybody would be like, oh my God, my Alexa's playing, Bon Jovi or Cinderella or whatever. Anyway, so you leave company A to go to company B. See how good I am? Right back to it. And you sit down with HR and they go, oh, John, we're so sorry that you're leaving. You've been a really valuable member of our team. We'd like to ask you some questions. Was there anything we could do better? What did you learn? What are the reasons, that you're leaving? And then the person says, my manager this, or I was looking for opportunities to grow. And then the company gets better because they kind of put together data over the period of a year of everybody that left. And they go, well, this percent left because they were retiring. That wasn't on us. This percent left because their significant other or their spouse took a job in another state or country. So that's why they left. But this group left because relationships with their manager. This group left because there wasn't enough opportunities for growth. And then the company sits down with their leaders and says, how can we improve this so we decrease our turnover? And I started thinking to myself, that's kind of like if everybody that got sick and died, we did an autopsy, but we never did anything to make them better when they were sick. We never
Mhm.
checked in with them, never did a wellness check, never did checkups, never drew labs, never took blood pressures. By the way, you know that all my labs came back because so John, am I allowed to talk about this? Can I talk about this? About what I
I
was
don't see why not.
so
This is your this is
no,
your
so
information to
so
share.
so I'm doing this whole I have life insurance, but I wanted more life insurance because my financial advisors at Kinderpath advised that I should have more. Basically, just because they like Dawn better than me, and if I die, they want her to have this amazing life that she's gonna have. If I like literally right now, if this computer blows up and takes me out, my family is gonna be like the Beverly Hillbillies. You have no idea who the Beverly Hillbillies are, do you?
Of
Damn.
course I yes, I do. Come
Thank
on.
God.
I'm an
Okay. All right.
elder millennial. I
That's
know
true. Okay, I just
exactly
wanna
who
make
that is.
sure. I'm just wanna make sure. So, anyway, they did my labs. My labs came back perfect. Like, they couldn't
Good.
be any better. Anyway, so
We did that podcast 54 and Fit a few
and
years ago.
now I'm
I'm
57,
just
about
saying
to
it's
go to
good to
heaven.
see Oh, that's a good Oh, you've done something. We're doing that. That's gonna be the next podcast you and I do. But it's good to see that you're continuing the trend of fitness and health and that
I
your
am.
labs
So
support it.
So
Yeah,
my point
continue.
is, I have all that information. So I know that my blood pressure is 106/62. Don't hate, it's very good. I know that my cholesterol, my triglycerides, everything's
So much
great.
better than mine.
Way better than yours. So, and you're 20 years younger than me. Shame on you. But you look better than me. So I mean, I'm healthy on the inside. You're a hottie on the outside. I would happily switch with you and just be like a mess on the inside, but look good because I look like freaking Jason Statham's grandpa. But so the fact is, if I didn't do that, and then like all of a sudden, you're at my funeral and they're like, oh, we did an autopsy. His cholesterol was high. His heart was bad, all that crap. Great. Let's use that information to ensure that Dawn's next husband is super healthy. That's not really good. So then I started thinking, why are we spending so much time in exit interviews when we should pivot towards stay interviews? We should, and if you don't call them stay interviews, retention interviews, or whatever. And then I started thinking, well, that's great for work. So we'll talk about that. But what about in our lives? Like,
Mhm.
how many people have had someone spring a breakup on them in their life? You think, things aren't perfect, but then all of a sudden the other in your relationship goes, peace out. I'm not doing this anymore. I want a separation, or I'm not happy, or even if it's just somebody you're dating and all of a sudden they start to ghost you a little bit. And then, after they leave you, you run into them a year later and you're like, what happened? I really liked you. We had fun, but your breath was bad. Or I really liked you. We had a good time, but I felt like you were more focused on work. And you almost wish that maybe during the time that you were together, there was like a check-in. So that's kind of just what I want to, it's very simple because we're going to keep this short and sweet. What do you think about that as a leader? Now you're a leader, you're an entrepreneur. How many employees do you have in total?
So it's six, seven if you include myself. So we're a team of seven. And well, I like where you're going with this. A few weeks ago, we did a team retreat, and we read the book Unreasonable Hospitality. Which, in fact, I'd like to do a podcast with you
Okay. I'll
on
read it.
that topic, which would be fun. But the whole concept was how can we deliver on this idea of unreasonable hospitality for our clients? But what I didn't realize as we were reading the book, and what we're kind of, for me anyway, I don't know that this came out in our team sessions talking about it, but for me, it then sort of became like, well, how can we create unreasonable hospitality within the conditions of our work environment?
Yes.
And I mean, we don't do, there's a lot of things that I think I personally don't do well, and that as a team we can always improve upon, is from like a leadership point of view, but something that we really do value. And I would like to think that if each individual on my team was here on this podcast would maybe agree with, is that we do value communication. So we don't, maybe there's not this formalized process for a stay interview, but it's, what's happening, what's going right, what's not, what can be improved, and not like what could you be doing better, but what could we be doing better, how could we be collaborating better. So for me, communication is important. That's an all-time, that's what comes up for me as you're saying
Yeah.
that.
No, but I
I
mean,
don't think
and
we've created formalized space to have stay interviews, which is making me think maybe we should, but
I
I
think
love this idea.
yeah, I think that any entrepreneur or manager or leader, and now remember, and I've said this before, I used to always hear people say back in the day, relate and don't compare. So if you're not an entrepreneur, don't turn this off. If you're not a manager or a leader or a vice president or a director, don't turn this off. We are all leaders, whether formal or informal. You could be a leader in your classroom. You could be a leader on your team, your sports team. You could be a leader in your chorus group. You could be a leader in your dance company. You could be a leader, even if you don't have a title.
In your
We all,
household.
yeah, in your household, you could be a leader of your family. You could be a leader at your church or place of worship. So I would say that you have to think about the people that report to you, work with you, cooperate with you. How can you feed them and nurture them before they're starving? How can you give them the psychological, spiritual, physical safety before they feel endangered? You know what I mean? We wait until someone's running out the door to say, please, please, please stay. I remember, John, when the last job that I left, because I've been at my company now since 2007, the last job that I left, when I was a administrator, a director at a hospital of a pretty significant department. Actually, it was over 3 hospitals, not to brag. But I remember when I went to my CEO and I gave my notice, and I gave 4 weeks notice because my role I knew would be really difficult. I had to train. He offered me, and I'm sorry if I've ever said this before and I got the number wrong because it's so long ago. It was somewhere in the realm of a 20% raise. Now, anybody that's listening, if you've ever gotten a 20% raise, I'm impressed. I never have. The biggest raise I had ever gotten at that point with an exceptional review was about 5%. That was very, very, very good. This was a 20% raise. And do you know what it did? It ticked me off so
Yeah, I bet
much
it did.
because I said to him, and I'll say his name was Mike. It wasn't. I said, Mike, my last 3 reviews, which were exceptional, I've saved this organization millions of dollars in stuff. My highest raise was 3.5%. You're telling me that I'm almost 10 times worthy of that now, 10 times better than that now because I'm leaving? And it made me even more convinced that I needed to go, because that meant that they could have been doing this all that time and I could have been improved my lifestyle. And so that's the kind of thing that when you're running out the door and somebody, don't leave me, I'll change, I'll stop snoring, I'll whatever, I'll trim my eyebrows, whatever it is. So I kind of feel like in the work setting, it's easier, right? You do an interview, and you have some questions, like you just said. What are the things that we're doing well? What could we be doing better? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? And I believe you should always ask the question, just be direct. Are we at risk of you going somewhere else? Are you thinking about, now, will people always be honest with you? No, but some these days, I think, especially the younger generation, I think they're straight up. I mean, my generation will be like, doing job interviews, being no. But one thing I do appreciate about millennials and younger, they tend to be a little bit more. And I'm not being mean. I'm not saying nobody else in the other generations would, but they tend to be like, no, I am actually thinking about it, or they might, right? So, then you can say, well, what would we have to do to retain you? And if it's unreasonable, oh, I want a 50% raise, buy. I want your job, buy. But maybe it's just, I want more opportunities to teach. I want more opportunities to grow. I want to get into the promotion program. I want to do mentoring, whatever it is. So, I mean, that's easy to do. Wouldn't you say in a work setting?
And I think if whether you formalize it or it's informal, the 2 words that I keep coming back to as I'm listening to you talk about this is communication and intentionality.
Mm,
So making sure it could be like in the work setting, a series of questions that you want to make sure you're going through and asking periodically. It could be informal and just, I find that a lot for me, like just for whatever reason, the natural sequence of events has led to this conversation that we're having. And I'm like, let's strike while the iron's hot. I'll think that in my mind. I'm like, let's just have this conversation now. Maybe it's confrontational and maybe it's a little difficult, or maybe it's just organic and feels right in that moment. And
yes.
I think as a leader, you do have to be ready to have those conversations. Not, oh, well, you know what? Next Tuesday at 9 a.m. is when we plan to have this. So I'm going to pause this here and we'll have this next Tuesday. It's no, if it's Friday afternoon and we're having this natural flowing conversation, you got to be intentional about it. And back to the relational thing within families, I feel the same way about the example you gave where it's like a boyfriend girlfriend and all of a sudden they break up with them and out of nowhere seemingly to the other partner, and you're just like, wait a minute, I thought everything was fine, I had no idea. And then
Mhm.
one partner's, no, 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 we're done. That shows that intentionality and having that conversation didn't occur leading up to it, or maybe that person didn't feel safe to be able to have that conversation.
Or that.
Maybe, hey, I'm being maybe critical or giving some constructive feedback, and you don't like that
Mhm.
you're taking that very personally and you can't handle that. So I don't know, I mean, there's a lot to it, but I think several, I guess maybe months ago now, by the time this podcast airs, I did a solo one. I don't know if you listened to it,
I
but it
listened
was
to
a
all of
solo
them, of
one.
course.
Hey there, you're awesome for tuning into the show. Do you want bite-sized daily doses of above-board content delivered straight to your Amazon Alexa? Subscribe to Canterpath 365 and enjoy our daily brief featuring market updates, relevant financial news, and mini clips from yours truly on this podcast, as well as Rich and Matt. Visit canterpath365.com to sign up. It was on financial date nights. It was the importance of financial date nights. So
Oh,
not to
yes.
pivot this financially at all, but Jackie and I have these conversations periodically about our finances because I believe, the two main reasons for divorce in the world are communication and finance. And so if we combine those two things and we lack communication about our finances, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So we try to create intentionality around those conversations. And maybe this is what I'm thinking of as you're telling me all this. I'm like, well, maybe that's just how natural date nights are reserved for. But like just having these kinds of constructive discussions with your spouse or your partner or your team, whatever the case may be, that relationship that's important to you. That's
Yep.
what I think of.
Can I just ask you a sidebar in those conversations? Did you discuss, because when you were away for your vacation, I picked up your mail and I was getting all your packages. Did you discuss with her like how much vineyard vines she was allowed to buy, or just she went ham, she could do whatever she
No, I
wants?
take those catalogs and I immediately throw them in the garbage before she sees them because she loves thumbing through those catalogs, old school style. We all shop online these days, but she gets these catalogs and almost like a kid before Christmas, I know I can see her mentally circling what she wants. So I'm like, we just throw those away and just eliminate that temptation.
I have,
But it's funny, a couple,
what?
yeah, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say a couple days ago, we're on a group chat with Patrick Surmeyer, who's been on this podcast a few
Yes, yes.
times, his wife Anna, and then my wife and I. And he sent this reel. You know that reel of the guy going, boring,
Yes, yes,
boring. You know that one?
yes.
So the caption was when your spouse tries to talk about finances to you,
Oh God.
and Jackie's, Anna, please don't address this. Like John wants to have another financial date night soon. And she's like, do people still do financial date nights? And I'm like, heck yeah, we do financial date nights. And unfortunately for Jackie, the result of that has turned into we're having a financial date night soon.
Yeah, well,
So
I think unfortunately for you, those Vineyard Vine boxes will still be showing up. I think they're just gonna
yes,
come to my house now.
yes, I
But
do my
but
best to throw the catalogs away, but that does not stop the
but
purchasing.
back to your point, what I liked when you said intentionality is, I think we have to look at this not so much as a checklist, but really as a check-in list. Okay, so the difference is a checklist is I'm going to ask this question, check. I'm going to ask this question, check. I'm going to ask this question, check. A check-in list is you're involved, you're intentional. The word in, I like that because you're there. So with your team, with your employees, with your coworkers, with your colleagues, and heck, with your clients, when you have a client leave you or a customer leave you, and maybe you say, hey, could you fill out this form? What made you go? Look, have you ever unsubscribed from an email list and it says, please click why you're unsubscribing? I never signed up for these. I'm getting them too often. Da, da, da. And if you ever click, I'm getting them too often, they immediately respond with, would you like to change this to every month or every 3 months or every whatever? And that way they still retain you possibly. It might even be 10%. But maybe if people did that with their clients and the people that they serve, their patients, their clients, their customers, their students, whatever it is, whoever it is that you're serving, and you ask them, how are we doing? What could we do differently? What would you need? who knows, even if it's one person a year that you retain, that could be the difference between closing up shop or not. But then pivoting to relationships, I like that, talking about money and having those conversations. That's been for me the biggest thing that's come out of me, years ago coming to Candor Path is how you all not only communicate, but how it set Dawn and I up for success, because we talk more about money than we ever have. And it wasn't just kind of like, yeah, yeah, everything's fine. It's, we have conversations, how much we have in the emergency fund, and we need to replenish that, et cetera. I just think it's really important to have a check-in list. And I think it's very easy, and we can make it simple. 3 questions. What are we doing, or what is it that's making you happy, or what is it that you feel good about in this relationship or in this whatever. Now, if you change it to professionally, what is the organization doing well for you? But in a personal relationship, what between us and our relationship do you love the most? What do you enjoy the most? I'm sure for Jackie, number 1 would be financial date night. I'm sure that's number 1 on her list. Number 2, you would want to ask, what are some things that you think we should work on?
Mhm.
And I think number 3, especially when it comes to relationships, if you're finding out what's good, you're finding out what needs to be worked on, I think you need to say, when do we want to, talk about this again? When can we reconvene? Because to your point, being intentional and being involved also means that you set kind of an agenda, a schedule. You can't just do this once and never have to do it again. It's like saying, I said I love you when we got married. Why do I have to say it to you? I said it on our wedding day. Why do I have to keep saying it? Of course you have to keep saying it. So
But
that's
I also think to that comment you just made, it's understanding, it's having an understanding of the relationship that you, so if we're talking about the spouse, the example you said, like saying I love you once, like I, of course I love you. I don't need to say it every day.
right.
But if words of affirmation are that spouse, if that's that spouse's love language, or I'm going to use an example because this is what I'm thinking about when we're talking about this. 2 years ago, we had a therapist and a life coach, I think would be the way to describe her. And Tracy Weiss is coming on the podcast, but Tracy came to our office at Canner Path and sat with our whole team, and we did this Enneagram workshop.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's one of the things that she's an expert on, is
Yeah.
understanding the Enneagram and how this all works. And it was so cool for me to understand, like, everyone on the team's Enneagram type. And then I took that and I was like, Jackie, I want you to take this test. So like I brought it home. I was like, I want you to now take this test because I want to understand what she is. Well, her Enneagram type is the type 9, which is the peacemaker. So something that I understand about my wife is, if I come to her, I call it passionate. She
Mm.
might call it angry, but not angry, but like confrontational. If I come in hot about a topic, that she's not going to receive that well. Like
No.
that's not going to be a good, communication might be there, intentionality might be there, but delivery might be wrong because I'm not understanding how my wife is going to receive this information. So I don't know what the third word is there, but like that level of understanding, and I feel, and then parlaying that back to my team, like Raina on the team is, for example, is a type 2 Enneagram, which is the helper. And so there's certain like aspects that I think her and I have actually, it's funny because we've worked a lot together over the last couple of years, that we've learned about each other, like me being a type 3, which is an achiever, like not only how she communicates to me, but I think also the understanding of maybe John says certain things sometimes because he's just in his own, as an achiever, I'm very like action and goal oriented.
You are.
So when I'm
You are.
giving somebody praise on the level of efficiency about how they completed something, they might be thinking, "Well, I didn't want John to notice the level of efficiency. I wanted him to notice the fact that I did this at, for whatever a different reason." I don't know. I'm
Yes.
not, maybe not landing
Well,
that,
no, no,
but
that
like
makes sense. Like
the
they
idea,
want like that would be like if I bought Dawn flowers and her saying, "Oh wow, you got a really great price on these." That would
yeah,
not be, now for you, you'd probably be excited about that. But for
yes,
me, that would fall short. I would be like, "No, I got these because you've always said that these lilies are your favorite and it would make you happy and it makes the house smell good and you always comment about it, it makes you smile. Who cares if I got them buy one get one free?" But
yeah.
that would almost hurt my feelings, or if you bought your spouse like a beautiful diamond ring and they said, "Oh, is this 7 carats or 4 carats?" And you said, "Oh, it's 4 carats." And they went, "Oh, okay." I like 7 carrots. You know, you'd be
Right.
like, "What?" You know, so
Yeah.
I totally that really makes a lot of sense to me that you even I never thought that's really you just gave me like a an aha moment. I never thought, even though I understand love languages and all that kind of stuff, but even when you're giving somebody positive feedback, how can you know them through your check-ins so that that
Mhm.
feedback, if you know that Raina is a helper, then
Mhm.
complimenting her on something by saying, I just want you to know that when you did this, you made life so much easier for us. And the client was blown away because they were so stressed out. Thank you so much for serving our clients. And I just want to really, really sincerely let you know what a big difference this made for my day. That would probably be more meaningful to Raina than saying, hey, Raina, we decreased callbacks by 10%. Thank you. You
Yes.
know, she'd be like,
Thank you
dang.
for saving my example, but
No,
that's
I
a
didn't
perfect
save it. Your
example.
example was
Well, no,
amazing. It
you
was
you
amazing.
landed it better because that is actually an amazing example of a type 3. If I communicate the way that I would wanna be communicated to, it would be with more of those, like, action-oriented things of, as a result of this, it resulted in XYZ, whereas somebody else might look at that and say, "I just wanna make sure that I understood the why and
Yeah.
that we did something impactful for," and so it's a perfect example of just, you're still trying to communicate a positive message, but having a level of awareness to understand this person's not me and this person doesn't think like me. And that's an advantage if we can understand how our team works and
Right.
operates. So
Yeah.
I honestly, man, and Tracy, like I said, is coming on the podcast in the next few weeks. To talk about this because she even said to me, I just wish more companies and teams would do this type of thing. It was so impactful for me and the rest of the team, I think, to understand those interpersonal dynamics and knowing what each person's type is. I'll use Matt as a great example. He is a type 8 Enneagram, which is known as the challenger, which means he's very direct. He enjoys confrontation. So, as an example, and maybe this is also because I've known him for, I don't even know, 15, 16 years, something like that. Like, I can say things a certain way to Matt in this very direct way because I know that based on his type, that's how he wants to be communicated to. And he'll say things to me sometimes very directly. And I'm just like, oh, dagger, man. Like, maybe just pull a couple of punches, like,
Soften
ease
it
it.
up, Matt.
And so it's interesting. It's interesting knowing that. You know what I mean?
Well, I really like where this conversation is going, and we could talk forever about this, but I think the takeaway that I want for the listeners, and maybe the call to action, if you will, is where are you? Where do you need to check in? Where do you need to check in? Do you need to check in with your kids? Do you need to check in with your significant other, your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse? Do you need to check in with your team? Do you need to check in with your coworkers? Do you need to check in with your boss? Because there's also that whole managing up where you let your boss know, hey, this is what I need from you, and what could I, the best question you can ask your leader is, if I were able to just really knock it out of the park and impress you significantly, and if, what would that look like? Or what are the things that I can take off your plate and do for our team and for you to make things better?
Before, because I know you're going to close this out shortly, and before we do that, I want to mention something that you just mentioned that I'm very passionate about, which is your kids.
Yes.
I don't think I think we take for granted just how much our kids look up to us
Oh
and the
yeah.
level of leadership and importance. Like, I say that, and you're like, the listeners probably like, yeah, of course I know. Like, it's an important job to be a parent. The level of leadership and that role that you serve, like your kids, so many things are caught, not taught, and your kids are watching you. They're watching what you're doing, how you react to things, your emotional outbursts, like the good and the bad. They're seeing all of it, right?
Hmm.
And to be able to take that moment of pause and kneel down and look eye to eye with your child and have this conversation of having that check in, like, how is this making you feel? Like, that is a very vulnerable moment as a parent that I know I've had
Me
experienced,
too.
especially with my older, where I've said to her, look, I did not handle that right. And I'm coming to you and I'm acknowledging that and I'm apologizing for it. Will allow me to give you a little understanding of what happened in my own mind and body that caused that reaction. I'm not
Yep.
justifying it, and I'm sorry that I did that. But let's talk, like, to be able to do that with kids, and I don't do that perfectly. So I'm saying this recognizing full well that I could do better at this, but I'm very, very passionate about it because I think a lot of people could downplay, like, I'm not a leader in this scenario, or I'm not a leader in that scenario. If you have children or you have nieces and nephews, I guarantee you that they're looking up to you.
Of
Whatever
course.
example you're setting, positive or negative, they're seeing it, they're watching it, they're observing it. And that's so critical to get down and talk with them. So
I agree, and I'm laughing to myself as you said, like, kneel down, because now I'm thinking about Luke, who's taller than me, so I have to look up and do it. But I do it with Ava, and the other thing is, and this is sort of related and sort of not, is being surprise them with positivity. Every once in a while, I just walk into Ava's room and go, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm so grateful that you're my daughter. You are literally, if I could pick the best daughter for me, it would be you. I love everything about you. You're so much fun. You make me so happy, and you're such a great help to mom and I, and I'm so proud of you." And the look on her face is, I do this at least once a week, just for my kids, and I vary it. I don't do it on a schedule. I just try to remind myself. You can just see, like, her eyes light up, and sometimes she'll run over to me and hug me and say, "That meant so much to me." And just surprise them with love, and do it with your significant other too. Do it with somebody, your brother, your sister, your significant other, whatever. I think surprising people with that positivity is a really good way to keep people in your life that you want in your life, and to feed them. And I think people are always going around feeling like they're not enough, no matter how young or old they are. So, hey, I think this is a great conversation. And again, call to action is, do a check-in, ask some questions, get some feedback, be open, don't be defensive, listen. It's better to be able to retain people than to figure out what you could do better to retain other people after somebody you really value is leaving your life or your business. So rather than an autopsy, I'd rather us spend time doing some, like, labs and a couple of x-rays and a blood pressure or two on our relationships and on our teams. Would you agree?
I love it, buddy. Bring
I
us
love
home.
it.
That was a good wrap up.
And
And I got super passionate about the kid thing, because
I
but
love
it's
that.
not just kids. Like, people that are in your circle are
Yes.
watching and observing, and so
I
you
think
have
that's so
a
true.
responsibility.
And I think, it's not just, we're not just teaching when we're teaching when we're living. It's not just when you sit down and say, "Hey, little John Kennedy Jr., always make sure you're telling the truth and being honest." It's more important that when they see you going out of Home Depot and you realize that you left something in your cart that you didn't scan, you go, "Oh my goodness." And you go back, go, "Hey, come here, honey. Hey, excuse me, sir. I forgot to scan this. I need to, so sorry. It was in the bottom of my cart. Hopefully you won't get handcuffed." And then, the kid goes, "Wow, my dad is honest." So I think that's as valuable, if not more so, than just speaking about honesty. So letting them observe your behavior, because while sometimes, yeah, do what I say, not what I do, I get it. But better that my kid now is learning to drive. So it's funny, when I'm driving, he'll go, "Hey, dad, the speed limit here is 50." And I'm like, "Oh, shoot, I'm going 57. Thank you." Whereas last year, he never said that. But now
Yeah.
he's observing me. So now I'm a little bit more hyper aware, and I'll go, "Hey, buddy, the speed limit here is 50." So I always set my cruise control at 50 so that I don't have to worry about it. Or I pay attention here because it goes from 50 down to 35 to 45 to 50 again. And if you just keep going 50, oh, so he's paying it. He's watching me. So I love that example. I think that's a powerful example. Be who, be real, and set that example as a leader, as a friend, as a significant other. But speaking of that, thank you again for everybody for being here. We checked just the other day, and we are still in, is it the top 1% of podcasts? Are we still up there? Was it
I think it's
1%?
2. I think it's
2%?
2%
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Well, I'll call Joe
Still
Rogan.
really good.
Yeah, I'll call Joe Rogan and see if he'll, like, give us a bump up. But thank you everybody for listening to this. We do this for you, whether there's 1,000 people listening or 7 people listening. We don't care. We just hope you get something out of this. We hope you find value, and we are very, very grateful for all of you that share this podcast. Please do so. That listen to this podcast and that give us feedback on this podcast. Let us know what we can do different, what we can do better. And if you have any topics that you'd like us to cover, send us a note. We'd love to hear that. We wish you the best, and thank you for tuning in to the Above Board podcast. We're grateful to have you here. And until the next time, take care.